Welcome back to another episode of the Keep Fantasy Great podcast. I'm your host, as always, and commissioner, and today we got a special episode for you guys. We got power rankings, and then we'll bring in our special guest and kind of go through, a little breakdown and a look ahead into what week 4 holds. Recapping into week 3, let's go over and get right into our power rankings. At number 10, I have Barrera. We're dropping him down. He had probably one of the worst performances we've seen all around. Just not much to write home about here. We've talked about it, in multiple weeks now. With a running back-led roster, when your running backs don't perform, you can't really count on the wide receivers to kind of help you in any way. We haven't seen that from Burr yet. Hopefully he gets a little boost from his running backs. He's got all those handcuffs. Hopefully he can get a little bit more going from the wide receiver room. He was active in the waiver wire this morning, kind of using the rest of his budget. We'd like to see more from our, one of our reigning championship guys. I have Greg here at number 9. He's also 9th in points, and we haven't seen anything yet from his team. I've kind of talked about it, week in and week out, about how we're getting a lot of the floor of his team so far. No ceiling plays yet, but maybe that's just what it's going to be this year for Greg. You haven't seen it from Debo yet, ranking 30th wide receiver. You haven't seen it from Eckler yet. He's not in the top 10, top 12 for running backs just yet. You haven't really seen the pieces come together, and the depth is a lot of waiver wire guys. Guys he's picked up, guys that you could see back in waiver wires, and you probably wouldn't pick them up, and they'll probably be there in the next couple of weeks. You'd like to see those top guys kind of get after it a little bit more with Greg moving forward, but again, our two championship guys, Greg and Burr, are sitting at 9-10. At number 8, I have Steve. Steve now had a good week. I'll bump him up one, even though he lost. Sitting at 1-2, I like the way his team played. Derrick Henry finally took a big step this week. I think Joe Burrow got back to form, and Cordell Patterson has been, a huge bright spot for this team, something that you didn't expect. He made a trade that let go of Zeke. I don't think it'll affect his team much, hoping to get a little wide receiver outburst. But, couple questionable guys, a little concern for him so far, but I think, solid team. Steve's got a chance to kind of build off some of the momentum from last week, even though he took a loss. At number 7, I have Shijin. I think Shijin's team is really good. I like the way his pieces kind of come together, but you haven't seen that from the running backs yet. His wide receivers are one of the best cores in our league for sure. But a little concerning in that running back spot. You got Kamara, you got Mixon, two guys who you think would lead this offense, lead this team, and you haven't seen that yet this year. I think the wide receivers are solid all around. Kyle Pitts, it was good to see him get into action. But no, from top to bottom, Shin's got a solid team. You got to rely, though, on the Christian Kirk, that Curtis Samuel, those guys that you don't expect maybe coming into this year to kind of lead this team in a way that they have so far. You hope you get more production this week out of Kamara and Mixon, guys that you drafted 1 and 2, your first 2 picks on. But Shijin's been solid so far, right middle of the pack in the points scored. He had a huge week in week 2, then kind of drops it down in week 3. That's kind of what it's been so far for Shijin. Hopefully he can get some consistency rolling in. At number 6, we have Kyle. So Kyle was number 4 last week. I think I maybe jumped the gun just a little bit. I like Kyle's team. You didn't get the production that you would hope for last week. I think he had some tough matchups. But I like the pickup in Devin Singletary. I think it's going to be a solid RB2 moving forward. Had to spend up to get him. I think the wide receiver room's been pretty solid so far. But no, Kyle's team has been able to get it done, even though, a lackluster week this past week. But should kind of get a little bit more of a high-scoring matchup for him. And you'd like to see McCaffrey kind of jump into that real solidified number 1 spot. You spend a number 2 pick on him. He hasn't cracked 20 yet. You hope that's kind of coming soon, because when that does, I feel like it really ties this team together. At number 5, I have Emmett. All the way at number 10 last week. Again, when you only have 2 weeks to go off of, it's kind of tough. 1 week these people go off, the next week these guys go off. So it just kind of bounces back and forth. But Emmett's team putting on a huge performance, and I think when you have Lamar going for 50 points back-to-back weeks, it's tough to lose to Emmett. Or it's tough to lose if you're Emmett. Lamar Jackson's been explosive. MVP candidate James Robinson looking like the steal of the draft. Devontae Smith finally coming into his own. We said with Emmett's team, he's got those young guys, and they've been performing. It's going to probably go back and forth with Emmett. You're going to get those huge weeks. You're also going to get those down weeks. It's going to happen. But so far, it's been explosive from Emmett. Top 3 in points, right there on the cusp. It could be a good year for Emmett. We haven't seen him, bounce into that playoffs since 2018. So it'd be nice to kind of see him continue his success this year. At number 4, a little bit of a homer pick. I have myself. I have my team. I think, I've been one of the more consistent teams so far in terms of scoring. Maybe not in the winning column. Finally getting my first win this week. But, you got 4 wide receivers sitting in the top 12. You got a top, 5 guys so far. Nick Chubb. Dalvin Cook was able to get into the end zone. Maybe a little injury concern. But you have a little bit of depth piece to kind of maybe help out. It's one of the best wide receiver rooms, despite all being in new places this year. You've kind of seen those outbursts. Hollywood finally got it going. Amari Cooper's been great. A.J. Brown's been solid all year. Devontae's been doing his thing. So not too much to touch on my team. I think, top 4 in points, done well so far. I think it's, blue skies ahead, hopefully moving forward. At number 3, I have Drew. Drew took a tough loss and is on the verge of slipping out of where he's been this year. He started the power rankings at number 1, and since then he's kind of just been gradually moving down the chain from 1 to 2, now into 3. But if we don't see that production from Drew, it can be very concerning. He's still second in points, despite that awful week that he just had. A down week really all over the place. With Mike Evans out, you got Garrett Wilson, you got Breece Hall kind of starting to emerge into their own. So it'll be good to see for Drew and, hopefully get a bounce back week this week as he sits at 1 and 2 so far. And then at number 2, we have person that beat Drew. We got Josh. So Josh also with a down week, but I like where his team is at. I think he didn't get production out of the quarterback position, which, he's moving and he's making those changes to help that. His running back's kind of getting solidified, which is, was a big concern. Saquon looks like he's old Saquon again, which is huge for this team. The running back, too, still a little bit of a question mark, but he's got the guys to kind of plug and play. It's going to be Zeke. It's going to be Pollard. It's going to be Miles Sanders. It's going to be A.J. Dillon. That's some good options if you only need to start one of them. And then you got the wide receiver room. I think Pittman's great. I think Sutton's good. Mike Williams, a little bit of a down week could be concerning. But Justin Jefferson, again, another down week. You don't expect Justin Jefferson to get 3 points. You're expecting much more from Justin Jefferson moving forward. No real concern just yet, but it'd be nice to kind of see that wide receiver room break out like we had seen early on in the year. And then, of course, at number 1, we got the only undefeated team left in the league. We got Bartus, the heavy package, and it makes sense. You got your 2 tight ends, and they exploded this past week. You got Josh Allen, who's going to do his thing. Jonathan Taylor, who has struggled since week 1, not really finding what he's been capable of, but it's Jonathan Taylor, and we expect that. I think Amon-Ra, another possible steal of the draft contender. I think Amon-Ra is, he's been unstoppable, and that only helps project Bartus even higher, with his top tight ends, his running back, his quarterback. You can only touch on it enough. The heavy package is right. He's got a heavy package. Hey-o. But we got Bartus at number 1. That kind of concludes my power ranking segment. Bartus at 1. Josh at 2, Drew at 3, I'm at 4, Emmett at 5, Kyle at 6, Shijin at 7, Steve at 8, Greg at 9, Barrera at 10. We're due for some shakeups in this rankings this week. We got a good week 4 in store. I'm going to pass this on for our next segment and welcome in our guest. All right, welcome back to the KFG Pod. I'll welcome in our special guest for the day. It's going to be Justin Bartus, a familiar face here on the pod. Bartus, welcome in.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me again. I love to be here.
Of course, always welcome on the pod. All right, we had a little week 3 recap here. We had some high scores, and we also had a lot of people on the opposite end of that stick. With our under 100 point wins, a lot of people circling around the 100. Probably our lowest. Our most people under 100 I think I've seen since we did the switch to PPR. 3 people under 100 and 2 circling right around the century mark, as you might say. So not an impressive week 3 for most.
No, and injuries definitely played a part in that. I mean, I know that's the first thing that all these people might point to, but no, they really were pretty bad. And just, I feel bad. Me and Steve had a close one. I know we'll talk about it, but just like with Monty going down right in the first quarter there, Mike Thomas out, Diggs just cramping at the end of the game when he needed him, and all it takes is a little bit more production. And it's especially early in the season, these games. We have five guys at 1-2 now. It's going to take a lot of hard work to break that apart.
Yeah, 6 guys at 1-2. The 1 at 3-0, 3 at 2-1, and 6 of us sitting at 1-2. If it ended today, it'd be based on points, and it'd be Drew and I in the 5-6. But it doesn't end today. We got 10 more weeks of this, so we'll get some disparity hopefully coming soon. I know this week features a couple 1-2 people against each other, a couple 1-2s against 2-1s, and some 2-1 versus 2-1 matchups, which will be nice. So we'll hopefully get a little break up. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into a little bit of a recap from week 3. Thursday night game was you and Steve. Probably, I guess, one of our closer high-scoring matchups. Unfortunate for Steve. I feel like he finally got the production that he had been lacking so far this year, and an unfortunate, loss for him. But we know how that feels in fantasy football. You score some points, you don't get the win. Not much you can do there. What was he, 4th highest scorer on the week? I've been there, and I've been there against you. So
yeah, it's just I'm breaking hearts out here all over the place. But no, Steve definitely, like I said, I touched on the Monty injury, but I mean 1.1. I mean, he only lost by 12 points. Even if Monty plays that full game, based on how he's doing this year, that already could be the win. But it's tough with Diggs after 4 touchdowns in his first 2 games. Doesn't find the end zone. Like I said, was cramping at the end of the game. Wasn't even on for the last drive when the Bills were throwing every play. But good to see Burrow. As a get-right matchup. Burrow looked really good. I don't think he had any turnovers, so that's encouraging to see. Going into a short week, too, could take advantage of a tired Dolphins defense. But how about Cordero, too? I mean, nobody knew how that was going to look with this Falcons offense, but, I mean, Cordero looks really good and had 141 rushing yards. Like, dude, he's like probably in the RB2 conversation now. You can make a case for it.
I mean, he's the running back 6 on the year in PPR scoring. You saw this last year from him. I think that's the scare in the draft, was just when to take him, because you don't know how long it's gonna last. Because last year he did fizzle out a little bit, but he was producing like this last year, and I mean, it's a good pickup for Steve to have, especially production coming from a later draft pick. But it was nice to see also Derrick Henry kind of get back to Derrick Henry form. He caught a few passes. He had a couple nice runs. He got in the end zone. He did Derrick Henry things. So things looking good for Steve.
Yeah, that would be.
I think kind of.
Yeah, especially like you said, if Derrick Henry gets involved in the receiving game too, like they designed, and most of his catches I think were in the first half too. He had 5. They were designed screens, and he was, one was like the first drive of the game, and he was rumbling for like 25 yards. Like, get him into space, man. Once he goes downhill, he's probably the hardest guy to bring down outside of like, maybe Nick Chubb, but he runs so hard. Even now, we were talking, we thought he lost a step. Like, all you got to do is just get him into space, man. It's tough when you're running the stacked boxes all day.
Right. Yep. And same production from your team. Your tight ends did your tight end thing. Josh Allen threw 63 times. You're usually going to get some fantasy points when that happens. But it was good to see, I think, more so Dameon Pierce kind of get involved as, possibly the exclusive back there in Houston, and could be a future RB2 for you, which had been kind of your whole. Also, Ramondre on the bench as well. I think, you have those 2 guys who are kind of starting to emerge in the backfield in their own rights, and then kind of emerge on the fantasy scene for you, which will be good moving forward.
Yeah, definitely my RB2 spot and my wide receiver 2 spot are probably my biggest issues. I'd have some guys that can do it, but we'll see, and we'll touch on the waivers too. Made a little splash acquisition overnight last night.
There you go. So that was Thursday Night Football. Bartus wins 141.4 to 129.35. Puts Bartus as the only 3-0 team undefeated. Stevie drops to 1-2. Our next matchup, our London game, our first ever London game. It was good to get out there a week before the NFL so, the London fans could see what fantasy football is all about before they see the football side of things. And I love it because Emmett put on a nice little show for the London crowd. Being our weekly highest scorer out in London, you'll love to see that across the pond. Might have to be an Emmett feature over there if this is how he's going to perform when he's out there.
Yeah, maybe we even just consider moving Emmett to London, and you can play half your games out there.
Yeah.
But how about Lamar, man? Lamar is just like he's got to be him, Josh Allen, or Hurts. It's like it feels like it's one of them three. I mean, you don't want to count out Mahomes; he can always go off, but it seems like at least early, one of those three is going to win MVP, and they're just interchangeable, going for like 30, 40, even 50 points. So, I mean, that you got to love that. Emmett now, shout out to Emmett. Hasn't been getting that power ranking love, but I think he's going to be getting it, and. Now it's just like with him, with Devontae showing some promise. Emmett's now number 3 in points scored, and he's like a point behind Drew.
Right.
Like with Lamar leading the young team, and with that Bateman stack, like Emmett's looking really good. He's got a lot of momentum riding into week 4.
Yeah, I think back to back. For 51 last week, 49 this week for Lamar. I mean, I love to see it because I have a little pre-bet on Lamar to win MVP this year. So I'd love that cash out. I think it was good. I mean, good to see Najee, I guess, do a little bit more on Thursday night. Got in the end zone, which is always helpful. And then I think it's James Robinson, the real, one of the MVPs of this team, is a steal of a draft, being the RB, 3 right now in PPR scoring for us. He's the feature back in Jacksonville, and he's used heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's going absolutely nuts, and this is like a year removed from his injury, and he's just looking so explosive, like big play after big play, scoring a ton of touchdowns. Like you'd love to see where you're getting out of him. The Jacksonville offense looking like it's taking a step forward after they put a beat down on your Chargers in LA last weekend.
They were banged up. Herbo will get after it this week. But yeah, and then on the other side of the ball, you had Greg's team, and it's been the same story so far. I think for 3 weeks for Greg. Every game it's underperforming all around, and then Jalen Hurts carrying the rest of the offense. Jalen Hurts has been unbelievable this far, but he's kind of been Greg's lone bright spot this far. I think concerning as all hell. We talk about it every week, but even more concerning when Eckler only gets 4 carries. And I'm watching that game. I'm seeing Shoney Michel on the field like nonstop, getting most of even like the first and second down work as well. Like he was featured all over the place. I think it's super concerning how they're using him this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a guy, Eckler. He's like fantasy football #1 fan, telling all his guys to draft him. You get touchdowns, you get this and that. How about you get 60% snaps for one game? How about that? We'll start there.
Yeah,
not dump offs.
Right.
Yeah, I mean like, come on, like 13-3.
Yeah, you don't want that out of your.
Yeah, and it's like all off the set.
Right. It's been concerning for a lot of Greg's team this far. I mean, hoping to get Keenan back possibly this week, and I'm sure the Chargers offense would love that. I mean, I would like that with Herbo. Maybe not this week, maybe next week. But you got Debo, who has really yet to do much or replicate anywhere of what he did last year. I don't know what it is and how they're using him, but it's just not what it was last year. He has yet to really crack that big game, and he's sitting at the wide receiver 31, which is not where he drafted him as the wide receiver 6. You're expecting a little bit more production than what has happened so far.
Yeah, absolutely, and that just might take a little bit of getting the offense ready. I mean, we've seen Cincinnati had a problem through 3 weeks, and that's literally a team that came from the Super Bowl. Right. So I guess with Jimmy G going in, like in his tough environment on the road, but they only put up 1 touchdown. It was on the second drive, and then what was it? 1 more field goal since. So I don't know, just getting Jimmy G, probably just need more practice time, even though he's, already a familiar face in that offense. Just getting them ready.
You hope that he could replicate some of what he did last year with Jimmy G. But yeah, it's the London game. Emmett shined out 159.7 to 119.8. Moved Emmett to 2-1, and Greg slid down to 1-2. Common theme here. Bouncing into our next
feels like 2016 all over again, doesn't it? The first season of the league,
where everyone's just
Emmett
starts off hot. Emmett was the 1 seed that year, and you were right there with him. So I don't know, maybe a little foreshadowing of an Emmett Bartus. I'm sure you guys would love to get back at it again, and maybe you get a little bit of revenge for some Zeke Sunday Night Madness or whatever it was, Monday night.
Oh, yep. It haunts me every day.
Back into our third matchup. It was our 1 o'clock game, which was me and Shijin, our only winless team at the time, and no more. The new era has begun for my team. 1-0 in the new era, 1-2 overall. But a good week. Just speaking for myself, I'm happy with the production. I think the touchdowns were there. The yards maybe not so much. I think I could certainly get a lot more production out of Devontae, who felt like he was a little bit ignored. I watched some highlights on NFL Live yesterday of Carr explicitly not throwing or looking at Devontae Adams, which is a little concerning in my eyes. But they're 0-3, so whatever they've been doing is not working out. So you got to throw a little bit more to him, I think. But I love to see Hollywood get loose, and even Amari Cooper on my bench doing his thing. I think enough about me talking about my team. What'd you see from Shijin and I?
Yeah, no. So super impressive. I remember after week 1, too. We said your team just didn't score. They put up the yards. Like you said, it's a little bit of a backwards thing, except for Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, you got certified dogs and touchdown scorers on your team. So it was definitely encouraging, and we don't want to see anybody go winless. So happy that you joined the 1-win club.
The rest of the league.
But no, it looks good. And your team's got a lot of good players on it now. Like you said, you got Amari. He's off 2 good weeks in a row. I see you got him in the lineup this week. So excited to see him get going for you. That could be cool. It's still weird to see him outside Dallas, but right now he's got a little bit of chemistry set, and it looks like it's going to get better with.
Yeah, that's the theme of my wide receiver room. I drafted it, and it's all fresh starts. It's all new faces and new jerseys, but it's kind of showed off well so far. I'm happy with how they've played. A little bit worrisome when you got guys in different uniforms. You don't know how they're going to play, how they're going to connect with quarterbacks and stuff like that. But it's kind of been nice so far to see. Bouncing over to Shijin's team, I think. You got your production that you kind of expect from your wide receivers. You're not going to get the Waddle 170 yards and touchdowns every single time. You're not going to get Curtis Samuel. At the end of the day, it's still Carson Wentz at quarterback. So you got to lower the expectations a little bit. I think Shijin's team had that awesome week last week, and it was due for a little bit of a correction week, as you may say. But I think solid performance. It was good to see Pitts kind of get going. And you want to see more out of the running backs. You haven't seen it yet from Kamara and Mixon. And you kind of want a little bit more when you spend your first 2 picks on those guys.
Absolutely. And these guys, neither of them got double digits this week. And, it's a real concern, I think, now with Kamara. That Saints offense doesn't really look good.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis banged up right now. And, all he wants to do is just air the ball out to Olave, it seems like. So we'll see. Yeah, he's not really getting that same passing game involvement Kamara is. And then, they're mixing in the other backs a little bit more. With Mixon, he got hurt, ended up not coming back into the game. P. Ryan took over.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll monitor that, especially on a short week. It'll be interesting. But, you're right. You're definitely encouraging from Pitts. Finally posted over 2 catches for 19 yards. Didn't think it was possible, but, there he goes. Took a matchup against Seattle to get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, receiver core. I don't think there's anybody that has a better one. Maybe Josh that has a better core. With the 4 wide receivers included. But no, this is going to be the strength of the team, and he just needs a little bit more out of Kyler. Drafted him, hopefully being a top 5 quarterback, and just this offense is not. It's not it. Cliff Kingsbury's got to take a long, hard look in the mirror, and maybe throw out the playbook.
Yeah, it's been rough for Arizona, but I like the hyper targeting of Hollywood Brown, so I can't really argue with what they've been doing. But that was
Him and Red Bush.
that was our Sunday 1 o'clock. I win 129.55 to 106 flat. Our Sunday night matchup. Who is that? You have it? Josh and Drew.
Yeah, that was Drew versus Josh.
Yeah, the next two matchups, Sunday and Monday night, were very underwhelming. You have, I think at the time, they're second and third in the power rankings to start the year. They were second and third last week, and they were top 4, I think, going into this week in points, both of them, maybe even top 3. But just an absolute dud of a matchup. Just neither player. This is our first under 100 win of the year. Maybe have someone dive deep into that to see if we've ever had one, at least in PPR formats.
Where at least
when the last one was, but yeah, just a dud of a matchup. Not much positive coming out of this one.
No, but it was so dormant that it was exciting. It came down to the Monday Night Madness. I mean, Josh needed, I think it was like 20 points even from Saquon, like just about that 19 maybe. He was able to get it for him. We love Saquon's usage this year. Broke that big run. I know you cashed out on that big run on Monday night.
3 separate bets.
We love Saquon. Yeah, love that, dude. Yeah, he's looking real good. We love to see that. Everybody that's a football fan would like to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Cortland Sutton's usage is encouraging too. Pittman got back right off an injury, looked good.
Mm-hmm.
There are just some concerns which are minor in a way, but like the quarterback position, it's just I don't know what Josh is gonna do. Like Matt Stafford couldn't put up a touchdown against Arizona. Like Mahomes put 5 on. They're not really on the same level. But that's a concern. You look at Justin Jefferson, 2 weeks in a row getting clamped, and this is home against Detroit. It's like you're already penciling him in for like 25, 30 points.
Yeah, I mean,
just 2 catches.
You look at what
Kirk
AJ did against
figured out,
Detroit.
man.
You look at what all the wide receivers in Washington were able to do against Detroit. To have Justin Jefferson with 3 catches for 14 yards. I'm not sure what's going on in Minnesota.
Yeah,
but you'd like I think
they got to figure it out. And even Mike Williams, Mike Williams had another dud with Keenan Allen out in another positive matchup. So if you're not gonna feel confident about Mike Williams there, now Keenan's coming back. When are you gonna feel confident about Mike Williams? I mean, luckily on his bench is deep. Ziato Olave, he just traded for Zeke. First trade of the year. Got to get a little shout out. Josh and Steve for making the first trade of the year. Yeah, sure. So Josh acquired Ezekiel Elliott, lifelong Giant fan. Josh acquired Ezekiel Elliott and sent George Pickens to Steve, as well as there was one other piece. It was Melvin.
Gallup.
No. Who was the other piece?
Michael Gallup.
Gallup. Okay. Yeah, so Cowboys, swapping new environments, and George Pickens as well for the Steeler fans. Steve, how about that catch by George Pickens, man?
I mean,
little vintage Odell right there.
The catch is sick. His fantasy production is not. He's also the wide receiver.
Not yet.
On
Not
the
yet.
Trubisky offense, but if he explodes, which we've seen rookie wide receivers do. I think it could be worth it in the end for Steve. So far, not so much. Not that I think Zeke is anything special this year with the way him and Tony Pollard and how explosive Tony Pollard looks in the backfield.
Yeah, absolutely. But, and then we'll bounce it over to Drew too. Yeah, I mean, Drew, who's number 2 perennial in the power rankings here, couldn't put up 95. Drew, what's up with that, man? After you're roasting everybody's team names.
Drew came in hot on the pod last week, roasting everyone's team names, and karma strikes back a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we look at Aaron Jones sandwiched one elite game between 2 duds.
That's exactly.
This is the second time he hasn't reached 10 points.
That's what Aaron
Yeah,
Jones
yeah,
does.
boom or bust.
I've owned Aaron Jones. I know exactly what he's like, and that's what he's like. He's the best running back ever when he drops his 30.7 touchdown game, and then he'll go, the next 4 weeks with 10 points, and you'll be lucky to even sniff a double-digit performance. But I think it's a tough matchup against Tampa. That was a pure defensive game. 14-12. You're not gonna be happy in a 14-12 game with really anyone in the fantasy side of things.
Yeah, unless Romeo Doubs.
Who's on Emmett's
the only
bench?
one that really. Yeah, him and Russ Gage on Greg's bench were really the only two that got something positive out of that one.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, you're 100% right. Even Cooper Kupp held to 16. Right, I mean that's just the standard this guy has come up with now. That's going to be his worst game of the year probably.
Yeah, it has been so far. But Cooper Kupp will probably finish as the wide receiver 1, so I'm sure.
Looking strong in that one.
That's not the.
But no, Drew will bounce back. Very tough week for Drew, but we have him high respectfully. His team, has got some ballers. Just got to take a little bit more time and figure out. And he'd love Mahomes to get back to. More than a touchdown a game.
It seems like a bounce back possible week incoming for Mahomes, but who knows? A couple more weeks, with some low scoring performances, and it could be concerning. But that was
1-2 now.
That was the lackluster Sunday night game where Josh took it 98.05 to 94.9, and then into our Monday night game, another small bit of Monday Night Madness. I think Cactus was down 0.4. to Barrera heading in with CeeDee Lamb, so just make sure you get a catch and maybe a little bit more just in case of a fumble or anything. But Cactus takes this one pretty handily after CeeDee's performance, but just another absolute dud on the Barrera side of things. Cactus's team, 2 straight wins now, feeling good. He didn't obviously get what he wanted out of Tua or Tyreek, but again, a close, tight matchup against the Buffalo Bills. I wasn't expecting another 100-point day from the two of them. I think, we'll get into waivers next, but Cactus maybe have solved that running back 2 spot that he's been leaning on Nyheim Hines for. But, good to get Kittle back out there. Drake London has kind of solidified himself in that Atlanta offense as a solid player each week. It was good to see CeeDee Lamb kind of have that game, 8 for 88, I think, in a touchdown. But I think the biggest concern looking at the roster, honestly, has to be Christian McCaffrey so far. Not that Christian McCaffrey's played bad, but, he's been a guy that we're all like, oh, he's quarterback proof. He's done it with Kyle Allen. He's done it with Teddy Bridgewater. Even Sam Darnold last year when Christian McCaffrey played, was a 20-plus point scorer. He's yet to break that 20-point mark, which is kind of what you draft McCaffrey as. Sitting at the running back 11, by all means, is not bad. It's just not what you spend your second overall pick on.
Yeah, and all of that is tied in receiving usage, and he's used to. We thought that he was a lock for 5 catches a game. He's he's basically a wide receiver 1 that runs the ball 10 times a game. It seems like, but no, he's barely been able to get not even really getting targeted by Baker. Just pulling in a few targets a game, and he's only getting 2 catches from it. And he's put up some solid rushing, some rushing lines. But he's gotten the end zone once, and if he's not really finding that end zone with this kind of lack of receiving upside, it's hard to see him paying off that number 2 overall price tag.
Yeah. But a good win nonetheless from Cactus. A win's a win in this league, especially. Put him at 2-1, and then on the other side of the ball, you have Barrera, and probably one of our worst performances we've seen. DeAndre Swift was knocked out of that game early, and I mean, it's just bad all over the board. I don't think Leonard Fournette is you expected with all the injuries to the wide receiver room and what everything's been happening in Tampa, that kind of Leonard Fournette would be more of, the passing back and catching passes, and he'd kind of be the focal point of the offense, yet to get in the end zone so far through 3 weeks. And with Mike Evans coming back, maybe that'll open things up for him a little bit. But I think the biggest concern here with Barrera is, it's always that wide receiver room. Gabe Davis in his first game back played a lot of snaps. I think he was on the field for 80%, but not the target volume with 63 passes from Josh Allen. You'd expect some bigger games from wide receivers. And then on the other side, it's Brandon Cooks, who hasn't been what Brandon Cooks has been. He's usually your solid, consistent 12 to 15 every week. You could expect that from him, but you haven't gotten that once this year from Brandon Cooks. So
yeah,
when you go running back heavy, you're hoping your wide receivers hit, and they haven't hit yet.
No, and of course there's still time for it, and he's the handcuff king this year. I know Josh got a couple with Dylan and Pollard too, but Barrera is the handcuff king. He's ready. Like, this is his time to shine almost, especially while we're waiting the Dalvin news. But Jamal Williams looking to step right in there, and then even and with Madison possibly playing. But this is what we talked about, right? It's like with you're already starting 4 running backs. Like, is this really like improving your starting lineup? No, it's not really. They're basically interchangeable. They both go off usually when they're in. You still have those question marks at tight end, at wide receiver, at quarterback. So they're going to step in, and you're not going to skip a beat in the running back room most likely. But it's just really not making improvements. And this is something that we'll touch on, just in a few minutes with the waiver wire. We'll talk more about that.
Yeah, 100%. So Cactus takes that one. 102.2 to 79.9. Barrera falls to 1-2. Cactus, one of our 3 2-1 teams, puts them top 4 in the standings. Let's talk waiver wire. Today is Wednesday at recording, which means all the waivers went through this morning. And we had some big ones this week. I think, you expect, I guess, just, the big handcuffs with all the injuries of Jamal Williams, Khalil Herbert, Alexander Madison. However, all 3 of them already rostered. So that kind of opened up, the other players that you don't expect to be on waivers, and that highlights our first one, Devin Singletary. A nice performance from him last week, and Cactus able to pick him up and slot him into his RB2 area for $35, and he kind of had to go that much. Josh tried to get him back after dropping him last week for $32. He comes up just a little short. I know I threw in a $15 bid just in case. I see Greg here threw in a $10 bid. Just a couple just in cases at the end. But a nice pickup from Cactus to hopefully kind of solidify that RB2 spot, which has been a big question mark for his team.
Absolutely. Yeah, and he's coming off a game where he just caught 9 balls from Josh Allen, and it's maybe that was because of the increased passing volume that Buffalo had in that game. But I think he's clearly ahead in the pecking order there. They do have 3 backs in that committee. But yeah, that receiving usage gives a lot of optimism and really, is a solid light going forward.
Yeah, 100%. Our next ad was you sneaking out the Elijah Moore pickup for $19. Cactus falls just short at $18. We haven't really seen that yet this year, where you put in your waiver wire picks and you're like, how much should I do? How much should I do? You're debating in your own mind. And you put just enough to win that one by $1. Emmett put 8 on Elijah Moore. I kind of figured he would go for him, being that it is a Jet. I put a $0 bid. Josh also with a $0 bid, just in case he slipped through the cracks, but he did not. And you get a nice little pickup, another Barrera wide receiver that ends up on your team. You saw it with Brandon Ayuk earlier in the year. And for someone with such a big wide receiver hole, it's interesting that he's kind of let go so early or so quick on these young guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had more actually last night at $21. I thought somebody would put a $20 bid in, and I really thought I was going to get beat out by Emmett, or possibly Barrera trying to add him back. But I was happy to get him, and hopefully with Zach Wilson coming back, they showed some flashes last year. Hopefully, can channel some of that again.
Right, definitely. Our next ad, or one of our last ads before we get into the Barrera ad segment, was Josh picking up a Trevor Lawrence. He also picked up a Tunyon for $0, but he picked up Trevor Lawrence for $12. Barrera put in a $10 bid, even though he didn't have the funds for that. He didn't do the math right on his end, but it wouldn't have mattered because Josh gets him for 12. Nice little quarterback addition for a team that's kind of had a little bit of a quarterback problem. You saw him with Russell Wilson early. That's who he drafted, expected a little bit more from Danger Russ, but hasn't gotten that. Stafford last week without a touchdown, right to the waiver wire, and he gets Trevor Lawrence, who, coming off a 3-touchdown game in LA against the Chargers defense, who's pretty solid. A lot of positive outlook on that one. And we kind of skipped over a few here, and that's the Barrera has his own little segment. He put $20, gets David Njoku. Only other bid there was a Josh $0. And then a Zay Jones $20. So Barrera, after dropping Ayuk early, dropping Elijah Moore this week, realized, maybe his 2 wide receivers aren't going to cut it out. Zay Jones for $20. A couple $0 on Zay Jones with Greg and I, just, again, if he slips through the cracks. He did not. But Barrera now down to $5, which is why his Trevor Lawrence bid was not successful. And I think, this is where the issue comes to play, where you only have $5 and your team didn't really improve much in your weak spots. You're weak in tight end, you're weak in quarterback, you're weak in wide receiver. You're still kind of weak in all three. I mean, Njoku hopefully can pick it up. You saw he was able to have that big game on Thursday night. He adds Jared Goff, which is always concerning because it's Jared Goff. But still an issue and down to $5.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to put a damper on anybody that he wants the rest of the year, with literally everybody having more than that. Some guys not as much, but a lot of our guys have barely even dipped into that budget. So that's just going to put him, out of the sweepstakes for a lot of the big free agents down the stretch. And yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, we'll see what happens with Jared Goff at quarterback. Drop Carson Wentz. I mean, Carson Wentz, had a tough matchup against Philly. Obviously didn't really look good. So there goes Carson Wentz. But, I'm excited to see what Zay Jones is going to do. I mean, I like him, as a player kind of. I mean, we saw with Brooklyn last year had that big, or with Vegas last year had that big walk-off touchdown in that game on Sunday night. But, I mean, a lot of it, it's just it's 3 guys that play there in that receiving core. It's Marvin Jones still out there playing. Chris Kirk is looking like the wide receiver 1 there, absolutely. And, he's probably like a top 10 receiver this year in total points. So how much is really left to go around? But, I tap hat off to him, the same as Shijan. You got holes, spend the money, get your guys. There wasn't really anybody besides Elijah Moore that was really that appetizing out there, a wide receiver. So good to see him go snag one.
Yeah, you hope that these guys can be the answer because if they're not, you can't go back to the waiver wire because you're stuck with only $5 in your budget. A possible trade, I guess, concluding there. But yeah, we're at $5 kind of caps off our low end of our budgets that are left. Shijan's at 35, Josh is at 45, Kyle at 63, you're at 81, I'm at 95. I skipped over Greg, who's at 60, and then we have 3 people still with $100 to their name: Steve, Drew, and Emmett. It's only week 4 now, so some things will maybe swing the other way. No one really notable dropped. I mean, you dropped Darnell Moonbear, big pickup coming my way. But other than that, no notable names really sent to the waiver wire. A couple quarterbacks, but that happens in this league. It's only a 10-man league. You only get 1 quarterback to start. Our quarterback options are always usually pretty good on the waiver wire, so you can always kind of lean on someone there if need be.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's look ahead to week 4. Why don't we? Week 4 has a nice, interesting scope here. You got 2 matchups with filled up with 1 and 2 teams. You got a 2-1 versus 2-1 matchup, and then you got your other ones. But let's start off with Thursday night football. We have Kyle. No, did we? Kyle and Emmett. Yeah, we had you. Right?
Kyle Emmett. Yeah, I like that.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Thursday night football, we have Kyle and Emmett. Emmett caught a nice, hopefully an early flight home from London. Come home for your Thursday night game against Kyle. What do we see here? We have Kyle just picked up Devin Singletary right in his lineup, and a nice 8-point favorite to start against Emmett so far.
Yeah, and I'm thinking off the jump, right? That I like Lamar. Buffalo is a tough defense, and I don't see Lamar slowing down here. Like what's going to change? I mean, only more points on the other side is the only thing that's going to keep him going even harder now. So now he's going to probably have to chase points, whereas New England put up honestly a good amount of points last week, more than I thought. But Lamar still kept going, obviously. And just like Jamar playing Thursday night, I think he's gonna explode there. The Bateman stack, so we like that for Emmett's team. And Kyle, a little concerned. I mean, Tua is legitimately questionable, is what is in the reporting that I've seen for this week, and it's a short week again. He couldn't, Tua's scary little injury that he had there. Ended up coming back in. Dolphins got a big win, but like we said, off the short week, that doesn't help any matters. So, with that and the Rico stack, looking a little gloomy right now. I'm thinking I'm going to take Emmett plus the points at least.
Right.
My fantasy 5 pick will stay, on the wraps until we see, more about the situation in Cincinnati.
You don't have to give any spoilers away for your Thursday night. We wouldn't want whoever your competitor is. We don't know yet. We don't want them to have any early leans of where you might go. But looking at it, yeah, questionable. A little bit concerning for a Thursday night game. However, we had some quarterbacks dropped. So there's some options out there for Kyle. You got your Matt Stafford. You got your Carr, your Cousins, your Wentz. There's some guys, capable of getting him that 20-point performance.
Yeah, one thing worth noting, too, I mean, I saw something that Dak is aiming to return next week. So he's rushing back. They gave him the initial timetable of 6 to 8 weeks. This would only be, 4 weeks, really, not even really a full 4 weeks. And he's trying to get back. I mean, he's seeing Cooper Rush gunning for his job here. Cooper Rush with the chance to go on 3-0 is, the backup. I mean, do we even need Dak? I don't know. We'll see. But, I mean, Kyle would definitely like to have him back.
Yeah, for sure. Looks like Kyle's big on his wide receiver quarterback stacks. He's trying to follow the previous trends. But no, some good matchups here. I think some friendly matchups all around. I think across the board, really. That Buffalo-Baltimore game will be a good one, and we'll touch on that in a few other matchups. But anytime you have two prolific offenses like that, it gets you excited for high-scoring affairs.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I'm looking forward to this one here.
Moving into our 1-2 versus 1-2 matchup. No, our 1-2 versus 2-1 matchup. 1:00. We got Josh and we have Barrera. I said last week Barrera's off Monday night, or off prime time for a little bit. You gotta respect some other teams. Get them in there. Our former, Super Bowl loser, kind of having that Bengals-like hangover to start the year. Sitting at 1-2, goes up against a tough matchup in Josh. Things don't get easier here. Josh's receiving core is stacked and it's fully loaded. Barrera's got the running back room fully loaded. Yeah,
I'm excited. I mean, we'll see. Like we talked about, obviously the quarterback is the biggest concern for Josh so far.
And
Russell Wilson, starter right now. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. But yeah, Russell Wilson penciled in as the starter right now against the Vegas defense. They've been porous, a little generous. Got Zeke in the lineup for the first time for Josh. And we had his first week last week over 6 points. Got find the end zone, found it finally. And we'll see. JJ across the pond. We said Pittman's looking good. He's got the Sutton Russ stack. Josh's team's looking good right now. I mean, but Barrera's got some friendly matchups, and like we said, a little bit of injury news to watch, in terms of the handcuffs. But I think either way, he's going to be in really good shape. With it looks like Jamal is likely going to start, and Madison. I mean, we've seen what he's done, in the limited times that he's shown up for Dalvin being out, and he's absolutely a menace. Top 3 every time, it feels like.
Right. I think the biggest concern there though is if Cook is out and Madison plays, it doesn't change his lineup in any way. He already has 4 running backs starting, and they're all solid starting running backs. If Madison plays, it's just a 5th running back that you're just subbing out someone else. It's not like it's an improvement. It's not like he's got, a weak running back room where a Madison steps in and that really helps and propels you with a good RB2 on the week or a solid flex play. He's taking out, one of his other top 4 players. When you look at this team, you see, okay, his 4 best players this year are his 4 running backs. Putting in Madison just subs out one of his top 4 running backs for someone else. So it's not making that big improvement you want to see when you hope to have someone's handcuff. You talk about it, that wide receiver room hopefully can get busy this week. You got the Baltimore-Buffalo matchup, and Gabe Davis coming off that injury. Now was back last week, saw 80% snaps. Can he get out there and get busy against a Baltimore defense who's kind of let it up so far?
Yeah, no, I definitely like Gabe Davis in this matchup, and it seems, every time, not last week obviously, but every time this guy's active, he's a big threat for a touchdown, and usually a long one at that too. So yeah, Gabe Davis can propel him, to the promised land in week 4. I think that could be the X factor. Jared Goff in a really positive matchup against Seattle. We saw Marcus Mariota go pretty nice. So, right now Josh is looking at a -4 favorite early on. I don't know. This is a good one, for CBS. We got a good matchup here. Off the jump, I'm thinking of leaning Josh -4, but again, until injury news comes out, nothing solid yet.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think it could get any worse for either of those two teams, both failing to crack 100 last week. You can kind of only go up from here, you hope. So hopefully should be a good one. Our 425 matchup is going to be me and Greg. A little bit of a rivalry between us so far. Good to see us get that nice 425 matchup, 2 historic franchises that you want to see go at it.
Absolutely, yeah, and we know you guys have history too.
Yeah.
The breakup last year, we saw who's up to a head start in that breakup, with Greg winning the chip. Mm-hmm. But this is like, honestly, I think this is my favorite game on the slate because we throw in that kind of history piece of it, but this is big. This is the reigning champ, coming in at 1-2. New era, 1-0 coming in, but 1-2. Loser goes to 1-3. That is not an easy hole to dig out of.
No.
History would probably lean towards the champs sliding. They never missed the playoffs. Doesn't have anything to do with week 4. But big week though. Nobody wants to go down to 1-3, and somebody's gonna be there.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's been an interesting start for both of us. Greg's kind of had my number in fantasy so far, 5-3 just in the regular season alone. So kind of hoping to trump that and swing things more towards my favor. But yeah, you look at the lineup now, it's probably our closest matchup as well. It has me as a -2 just to start. I guess we'll wait and see, Dalvin Cook's injury. If he is out, that will probably drop me to the underdog, just based off ESPN projections and looking kind of where I might have to pivot to. But yeah, this is primed to be a very close matchup. I see we got a lot of stake in Cleveland. I have Chubb, he has Hunt. I also have Cooper in there. So it'll be interesting to see, which running back day it really is. We saw week 1 it was Kareem Hunt, but the last 2 have been, the Nick Chubb games. Can we get that again for a 3rd straight week? Bouncing back and forth. I did it last week as well. I had my opponent's wide receiver 1 for their quarterback. So last week I had Hollywood Brown. Shijin had Kyler Murray. This week again, Greg has Jalen Hurts. I do have A.J. Brown. So it'll be interesting to see if he goes to Devontae again for that big game, or maybe we come back to A.J. Brown against Jacksonville. But yeah, around, I think, a lot of just looking at it, we have a lot of the same game with different players. or a lot of the same team with different players, really. I mean, I have Herbert and Everett. He's got Eckler. When me and Greg are watching that same game and rooting for different players. A.J. Brown and Hurts. You got Kareem Hunt, Chubb, and Cooper. You got Devontae Adams on one side. You got Darren Waller on the other. Thielen and Dalvin Cook. Marquise Brown and James Conner. I mean, Greg and I are eyes glued to the same games, watching them and rooting for different players. That's whose players are going to do better in those games. Really what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, this is the game of the week. I love the spot that it's in right now. And it's going to be fun. Like two quarterbacks, like two stars. And like they've been lighting it up this year pretty good. Herbo got injured, obviously, but they have huge matchups here, like at Houston for Herbert, and then with Hurts being home against Jacksonville. I mean, I think both of them could go for 30 to 35. I think that's safe to imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, interesting. Like you said, with your quarterback going to the opposite number one. I mean, we've been seeing that. We've been seeing that. Like. And it's fun to watch from the outside. Like last week, I faced Steve. I had Josh Allen. He had Diggs.
Right.
Like, we're seeing this happen more. And from the outside, it's fun. Not when you're playing. Or when you have the quarterback, I guess, it's not fun. When you're the receiver, you want it more and more because, obviously every time they catch and the more yards you get,
right,
it's good. And it's stressful, though, when you get down to the red zone and you're watching that quarterback, any other touchdown, anybody else, or you're just rooting for rushing scores.
Right. I think the biggest, what makes you most nervous, and especially with that, is a runner in Jalen Hurts, where when you get down to the edge, when you get down to the goal line, I need him to target A.J. Brown, and this team's been able to score. Jalen Hurts might run it himself. Same as a passing touchdown to anyone else. The points are still there for him. So I think it favors, it's not the same as that Kyler Hollywood Brown where you saw the hyper targets and a struggling offense just kind of throwing whatever they could to get some yards. But, Marquise Brown more than almost doubled Kyler last week. I don't know if we'll get that from A.J. Brown this week with Jalen Hurts and how he's been able to play. But, no, it should be an exciting one. And then it comes down to Debo on Monday night. I'm done at the 425 at the 40. I'm done at the 405, 425 window. I'm out. We have nothing Sunday night, and we go into a Monday night where it's just going to be Debo, and we'll see what Greg needs from him, and if he can get that production.
Yeah, I do want to give a little highlight to a trade that happened a couple days ago. Greg being active, a big blockbuster deal here.
Yeah.
Getting Adam Thielen and Steve with his second trade of the year.
Yeah. Getting
Juju Smith-Schuster, former Steeler, the TikTok man.
Yep.
So Drew, Steve
Who?
Who? So Steve making another splash play, getting Juju. We'll see if he shows up in his lineup this week.
There you go.
Oh my God.
We'll do a nice. That concludes, I think, our matchup. We talked enough about it. Moving into the Sunday night game, it's going to be your matchup against Shijin. In case you didn't know who you were playing, but I haven't seen this yet this year. With you projected to be at 144, a monster projection, a -14 favorite over Shijin, who probably would be projected to win most matchups, at 130. This is our Sunday night game because this should be a good one. I mean, you're projected 144, which is as high as I've ever seen. Some monster matchups, some monster players. But it's tough. It's gonna be a tough one for Shijin. You saw it last week. His team wasn't able to perform. The week before, he puts up a monster 160. I feel like that's kind of been Shijin's story in fantasy football while we've been here. He goes for those monster weeks, and then he duds out to kind of even level the playing field. He takes on you and hopes to get that first win. Can he pull that off?
I mean, what's going to be a big indicator is Thursday Night Football. I mean, I'm going to be nervous watching this one. I might not even watch it at all, now because, I mean, Shijin's just going to throw the house at me here with Mixon, Waddle, with Higgins. God, I mean, I could see him putting 60 points up with that trio, So I'm hoping that it's not, Thursday Night Football. Jordan Akins, shout out Jordan Akins, scored last week. Ever since, Thursday Night Football is usually on my side, so I'm hoping so. But, with projections, I hope it's known. Like, I hate projections. I don't look at them at all, like, really, unless we go off this for matchups and, for the spread. I don't look at them. I'm going to play who I want to play.
Right, of course.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Hopefully Jonathan Taylor can get right. He hasn't looked right in 2 weeks. I mean, he's getting the touches. It's just like they're not really – no real big plays, no real touchdowns since he only has one this year. So I'm getting a little nervous with that. Still okay, but love my tight ends. Hopefully Amon-Ra sticks it out. I mean, he will go nuclear if he gets to play at home against Seattle.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see. A lot of it is going to be, Kamara, how Kamara bounces back. We'll see what's going on with the quarterback in New Orleans. And then how Kyle Pitts will do as well will play a big factor into this week. But I think I like my chances to win. Covering that lofty spread is another thing. So, I mean, I don't know. Thursday night's going to be a fun one to kind of see. I might just wait until Thursday night or Friday morning, open up the app, see the damage. We'll see.
Yeah, that's going to be one that kind of tells the tale for how this matchup will go. I'm sure Shijan's going to need, I'd say at least 60 from those three combined just to feel even comfortable going in. That's not only is it, most of his lineup, it's also three of his top, 4 or 5 scorers. So he's going to need kind of a big Thursday night to kind of propel him forward. On the other side of the ball, you got Dameon Pierce, who's kind of starting to get into his own here. He had a nice little week against Chicago. Hopefully he can get that momentum going over against the Chargers this week. You're hoping that Amon-Ra St. Brown has played because he's been, like you said, nuclear every week. What a stud he has been. And then you got your double tight end, on Sunday night, and that's, I think, where the matchup concludes would be, you got Kelsey on Sunday Night Football against Tampa. How many points will you need? Will you already have secured it? Will you be down too much to cover? Time will tell, but a nice little feel to get one of your best on that Sunday night to kind of cap things off for the week.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was just the same spot I was in against Steve, too, with Cordero, popping off in that 4:30 slot. Mm-hmm. Just needed 1 point from Ayuk and, was able to secure the bag and go, a little bit more than that. So hoping that Kelsey will be able to –
on Monday night, so you'll have Kelsey and Ayuk kind of heading into the final 2 games of this slate. So yeah, that'll be good. Hopefully Ayuk can kind of get you to that 4-0, just like he got you to 3-0 with that slate's going.
Would love to not need much from them, even though they're my guys and I hope they produce. Would love to not need much.
To cap things off, we got our Monday night performance. It's going to be Steve and Drew. An interesting one where both of them kind of had the same result with 2 different tales of the story. So Drew with an absolute dud of a week, 94.9. And Steve, on the other hand, a loss, but, a loss that kind of, you still feel confident. A 129 performance, an injury to Montgomery might have been the difference in that one. Looking at this matchup here, again, another one that's going to leak into Sunday night just based on Drew having Mike Evans and the Tampa Bay Bucs fan that he is. An interesting one on the Steve side of the – oh, sorry. It's going to be Mike Evans versus Juju. Steve – we mentioned that trade. Steve has Juju in the lineup right now. We'll see if things change. He's got a ton of questionables for the week, which we'll hopefully, get a better look at towards the end, towards the Thursdays, the Fridays. We'll see where they stand. But, you got Montgomery, who suffered that injury. You got Stephon Diggs, who didn't play that last drive. You got Michael Thomas, who's also questionable. A lot of questionables heading into this week. A little bit of a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely butchered, the whole breakdown of the Thielen and Juju trade. That's why we're leaving that to Josh. That's Josh's role. I can't touch on trades anymore. I can't even, spit out the 2 people that are involved, let alone the people that are getting traded. But now Juju going back to Steve. He's got him in the second flex already. A lot of this, like you said, depends on the health of his players. And it's Wednesday. It's still obviously very early. But, if Monty could probably be the X factor in this one. Initial reports said he's going to miss like 2 to 4 weeks. But, Eberflus called him day to day. So maybe he'll actually be out there, and the Giants will let him have second most yards per carry to opposing running backs. Burrow Thursday night. See how we can build off a matchup against another AFC East team. And Drew's got Mahomes at Tampa Bay. That's going to be great to watch. I mean, but he is going to be, we talked about it, right? I mean, the quarterback's throwing to the opposite wide receiver.
Right.
And another example right here.
I think it's a little different though when it's Juju and Pat Mahomes who spreads the ball out. I'm not sure if Juju will ever put up enough to cap what Mahomes is able to do. But I kind of butchered it early. I didn't even realize half of Drew's team plays Sunday and Monday night with Mahomes, Evans, and Cooper Kupp. You're really going to have no idea if you're Steve heading into Sunday or Monday night, if you're going to be a winner or not, especially when Drew's got, all of his best players capping off the late slates. But those should be good ones. They project to be a little lower scoring, being those tough, Chiefs versus Bucks, with the Bucks not being able to get it going so far. Will we be able to see a real Mike Evans performance? Will Pat Mahomes kind of get back to what he's been able to do this year? Or are we going to see more of the same against another good defense, what we did last week? The Colts have a very good defense, whether they struggled on offense or not. We won't have to get into that. But their defense is very good, and you saw Mahomes with, a normal performance rather than, what we've seen him so far. And I'm sure Tom Brady would love to get Mike Evans back on the field after having to throw to Russell Gage 12 times.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited for this one. We're looking right now. Drew is a 5-point favorite. Matchups, they're not easy. They're not really not easy for either team. I think this is going to be a grinding game.
Yeah.
Could be like a Dallas and Giant Monday night game. That was low scoring for most of it. I mean, I know the Cowboys kind of came alive at the end, but this is crazy. And with like we said, with Steve's injury question marks, and with Drew, a lot of his guys playing tough defenses, it's gonna be a grinding game here. And 1 and 2 teams. Nobody wants to go down to 1 and 3,
right?
And the other one gets 2 and 2, gets kind of a fresh slate.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gonna be interesting. I think right now I'd probably lean towards Drew to cover, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The Fantasy 5 is gonna be tough tomorrow. Tough. Not looking forward to. Well, I always am forward to.
Any?
I don't know. Clarity of the answers that I need,
Any early leans for who you're going to be going up against, or anyone you want to see?
I'm gonna have to talk to Greg. Congratulations, Greg. He's the new Fantasy 5 administrator. So I'm gonna have to hop on the phone with him after this, and just try to get it figured out. What the schedule looks like.
Right.
Here.
He didn't impress me with his administration abilities last week. Things were out of order. Things were coming late. All over the place. I'd like to get it more defined, more settled moving forward. But, hey, maybe even Greg is the guy to go up against this week. Who knows?
Yeah. He's brand new in the role, so we got to cut him some slack. But I do want to give a shout out to Drew while we're talking about his matchup. Drew was able to beat me in Fantasy 5. He's the first guest through 3 weeks to be able to take me down. So now it brings my record to 1-1-1. With under 60%, under 70% correct picks.
We expect better.
Yeah, we're gonna need to get better than that.
Yeah, you might have to,
Yeah, and I'm hoping to get.
You're hoping to what?
Yeah, absolutely. What's up?
You said I'm hoping to, and I cut you off.
Oh, I'm hoping to sweep here. I'm really looking forward to a big 4-1 or 5-0 week. I think that's in the cards.
Yeah, you'll have to do a very, very deep dive into the lab this week. Maybe really, really look at the matchups here. Because you don't want to fall to under 500 in your own game. That's for sure.
No, I don't want to let the people down.
Right. All right. Anything else pressing you want to get off your chest before we wrap up here?
No, I don't think so. I'm just really looking forward to these games between the 1 and 2 teams. I'm excited to see, who's going to get their back against the wall here at 1 and 3 going forward.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great week of football. We got a good primetime game finally I mean, it seems like we've been starving for one of them, and even Dolphins Bengals could be really good too.
We have three
but Sunday night's going to be awesome.
I think we have three really good prime times this week after a lackluster trio last week. You start off Thursday night, you got Miami and Cincy. You got Sunday night, Chiefs, Bucks, and Monday night, you got Rams, 49ers. So, a little rematch of the NFC Championship game. That should be a good one. I'm excited for it. Week 4 is coming. It's right here. A day away from the beginning of Week 4. We're just going to have some really telling fantasy matchups, as you've already mentioned. This is when things start to pick up a little bit. So it should be an exciting one. Thank you for listening and watching, however you're listening or watching to this pod. Bartus, thank you for joining as always. It's a pleasure to have you on. Until next time, keep fantasy.